All right, let's dive into the MetaQuant 4D platform. We've gotten some really interesting stuff about the Tape E feature, and specifically, this reset timer thing, especially for scalpers. Now, you probably already know, the tape is as a live feed of every single transaction in the market. But why is that such a big deal?
Well, what's so cool about the Tape E is it goes way beyond just showing you price. Yeah. You actually get to see who's buying and who's selling, like the raw data, even down to those super fast, high-frequency trading events, those HFT things. It's like you get X-ray vision into the market.
No, we're not just watching some ticker. We're actually seeing the algorithms and all the strategy. Behind those crazy fast trades, that's amazing. Here's the best part. We can download all this Tape E data, like all of it, as a .csv file. So we can really dig into it and maybe uncover patterns and stuff that will be totally hidden otherwise.
Exactly. It's like, imagine you're trying to put together like a really complicated puzzle. You've got all these pieces, and that's the Tape E data. But you need a way to organize them to see the bigger picture. That's where the reset timer comes in.
Ooh. Okay, I like that analogy. So let's talk about the reset timer. It basically tells us how often the tape data refreshes.
Right.
But why is that so important? For scalpers, you know, those folks who make those split-second decisions.
You got it. And to understand why it matters, we have to talk about the market-making compass, another awesome tool. MetaQuant 4D, it uses the tape data to help you see what the market makers are doing.
Right.
The big players who can move the market. And for scalpers, a really short reset timer, like 30 seconds, is absolutely crucial.
So basically, they need the freshest data possible to catch those tiny trends. And price flickers that HFT algorithms create, it's like, they're reading the market's mind.
But then there's a story in the material about a scalper.
Who uses this exact strategy?
Oh, yeah. This guy noticed this pattern where some HFT algorithm would push the price down briefly. And then the market makers would come in and buy it back up. So he set his reset timer to 30 seconds to see the pattern clearly in the Tape E data. And he would buy at the dip and sell when it rebounded.
Wow. That's pretty impressive. It really shows how important order flow analysis is. Understanding the buying and selling pressure behind price movements. And with the reset timer, we can analyze order flow at different time granularities.
Exactly. Think of the Tape E as a river of data flowing constantly. The reset timer is like a dam. You can control the flow and analyze different sections. For scalpers, it's like taking snapshots at the rapids every few seconds to catch those quick opportunities. But other traders might do things differently.
Now, you might be thinking, oh, this sounds awesome. For those scalpers glued to their screens, what about the rest of us? Well, that's where things get really interesting.
For swing traders and day traders, you know those folks looking for the bigger trends, a longer reset interval might be better, like maybe an hour. That way they can see how the market-making compass changes over time and maybe find those areas where big players are accumulating or distributing stock.
Okay, so it's we're adjusting the lens, zooming out to get a wider view. Now, can we talk a little more about that market-making compass for our listeners? How does it actually use the Tape E data to give us those insights?
Sure, the compass. It's basically a visual of the buying and selling activity of those market makers. It uses algorithms to analyze the Tape E data, to find patterns that suggest whether market makers are adding to their positions or maybe distributing shares or just providing liquidity.
So if I'm getting this right, if I set the reset timer to say 5 minutes, I could potentially see patterns in how market makers are accumulating or distributing shares throughout the day, which would be a huge advantage for anticipating price moves.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really cool. For swing traders and investors, if we look at the market-making compass over longer periods, we can start to see how these big institutions are positioning themselves for major market moves. It's like tracking the footprints of giants.
I love that. And we actually have an example of this right in the material. There's a chart that shows the market-making compass over a whole week with the reset timer set to 1 hour. What can we learn from that?
Well, that chart really shows how the compass can highlight those longer periods of accumulation or distribution by those market makers. For example, you see a bunch of green bars a few days before, a big price jump. Those green bars mean strong buying pressure. So it looks like the institutions were loading up on shares before the breakout.
Wow. I never realized that we could actually predict those big institutional-driven market shifts just by analyzing tape data like this. This could be huge for long-term investors.
It definitely changes things. It shows just how crucial understanding the time element is for trading and investing. The reset timer lets us control that, our perception of time. We can analyze market activity at different levels of detail to find those hidden patterns and opportunities.
This is amazing. We've gone from the 30-second snapshot to a week-long panorama, all thanks to the reset timer. But what if we just said, forget the timer? What happens then? The source says we can do that.
Yeah. If you leave the reset timer blank, the data just keeps building up. As long as MetaQuant 4D is open, like letting that river of data flow freely.
So, on the one hand, we'd have tons of data for maybe some really in-depth long-term analysis. But on the other hand, wouldn't it be overwhelming to make sense of all that data?
Yeah.
Especially for short-term trading. Yeah, it's like we'd be using a fishing net when we really need a scalpel. We might catch something, but we'll also get a lot of junk.
Exactly. You got to use the right tool for the job. So for targeted analysis, setting that reset timer is key.
Yeah.
But let's talk about how to actually set it. The source material makes it seem pretty simple.
Yeah. Looking at the screenshot, it looks pretty straightforward. Can you walk us through it?
Sure. You just type in the interval you want in seconds, right into that little box.
Yeah.
So like 30 seconds for scalping or 3,600 for a whole hour and so on. Then hit enter and the box turns green to show you it's active.
Ooh, I like that. Nice and clear. So, just to recap, the reset timer tells us how often the tape data refreshes, which affects the market-making compass. And the best setting depends on your trading style and what kind of analysis you're doing.
Right. Short intervals for scalpers who want those quick opportunities. Longer intervals for swing traders and investors who are looking at the bigger picture. And if you're feeling adventurous, you can always leave it blank and see what you can find.
Just be ready to spend a lot of time going through all that data. That brings up another question. We've talked about setting the timer and the theory behind it, but what can you actually do with all that tape data you download? That .csv file doesn't exactly tell you what trades to make.
That's true. The data itself, it's just raw material. You have to turn it into something useful. But think of that .csv file as like a treasure map to the inner workings of the market. You can analyze trade size, volume patterns, the timing of those HFT events, and see how they relate to price movements and the market-making compass. You're like a detective piecing together clues to solve the mystery of price action.
So I should be picturing myself with a magnifying glass, hunched over charts and spreadsheets, late into the night. But seriously, this opens up so many possibilities. We could find patterns in those HFT algorithms, or track what the big institutions are doing, maybe even predict market turning points.
That's right. It all comes down to how you use the tools.
This has been incredible. We started with this one little feature, and it's led us to a much deeper understanding of how the market works and the tools we can use.
It all started with a question from our listener.
To the listener who sent us this material, thank you for sparking this amazing journey.
Keep experimenting with that reset timer. See what you can uncover. From all that tape data, you might find a whole new way of looking at the markets.
And who knows, maybe someday you'll be sharing your discoveries with the world. But for now, we'll leave you with this thought. We've seen how scalpers can use the reset timer to take advantage of those micro trends, but could this same tool, with a different setting, help us find those long-term, institutional-driven shifts that can really make or break a portfolio? It's something to think about as you explore that treasure trove of .csv data.
Happy trading, everyone, and keep diving deep.
This is The Deep Dive signing off.